Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm 𝗤𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗁. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley. Mark, this is going to air in January. Are you doing the goal setting? Are you getting everything squared away to kill 2020?
You know what? I haven't, for our company, our leadership, we have a 2-day offsite, the whole traction thing that we'll do in a couple of weeks from now. So third week of December. So we'll be ready on the company side for sure going into the new year. For myself, I haven't had that self-reflection yet. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be ready so I can be ready. I love the new year. I love it's so crazy how it's just a silly calendar, restarts so much and does away with so much bad, or is supposed to do away with everything bad that happened the year before, everything you didn't accomplish, or build on what you did accomplish. So I'm not there yet, but I'm definitely gonna be ready by the time this airs. So.
All right, we'll hold you accountable. I'll ask the same question 30 days now, 60 days from now. We'll see. We'll start measuring you on air.
Well, I think when this airs, I think if anyone out there wants to throw something in the Facebook, and I'll respond and give my answer that day of where I'm at. So I will for sure be. So at that time, ready with a good answer.
All right.
What about yourself?
Again, we'll hold you accountable. Someone get on there right now. Not if you're driving, but someone else get on there.
What about yourself, man? What's the big plans? You got some big moves you're making, I know, are working towards.
Yeah, we got a lot happening. I get similar for the beginning of the year. I do get motivated. I try to keep my overall motive though, right? Where it's not a calendar thing. I think motivation is temporary and it fizzles off. Your overall motive and your habits and what you do is the ongoing, at all times, right? So it's nice to get that little kick of motivation, but it's what is the underlying motive and just the difference between them. I can't remember what book I'm stealing that from, but that's kind of my focus.
Well, the whole traction theory, I just said that for our company. It's that the whole thing, the whole point in that book is everyone after 10 to 12 weeks, they fizzle out and they lose motivation. They see something shiny and they go after that. So their whole thought is reconvene and set brand new goals that are only going to last for a quarter. So if you're trying to, on the personal side, if you're trying to do something, just kind of plan in quarters. Don't try to plan for an entire year, because you're good chance you're going to set yourself up to fail, or things are going to change, or you're going to not be interested and just kind of do away with it anyway. So my feedback on that is just build personally or business, kind of build yourself up in quarters.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the other thing too is we've joked about it on the podcast, but just making it public, right? That accountability factor. If you tell someone I'm going to do this by this date, it's crap. I got to do it.
I do that all the time. So.
All right. Well, what do we got for the housing provider tip of the week here? Speaking of DC.
So housing provider tip of the week. I've been working in maintenance here the last couple of months. So I've been seeing where things can go inefficient for a landlord when they're not on top of things. But one thing, as it's gotten cold here, the no heats have, no matter how much, even if you are servicing them, you still end up getting a few no heats. But when that no heat, or maybe it's not even a heating issue, maybe it's a plumbing issue or a water shutoff issue, or meter issue, when those things are in different parts of the building that maybe a resident doesn't have access to, you're finding yourself or paying somebody else to go out there to allow access, whether it be 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. or, we had a building that we have a small panels and the breaker kept tripping. And because the tenants didn't have access to that part of the building, we had to keep running someone out there. Now we solved that for a different reason. We ended up upgrading the panel, but if you have some sort of access, whether it be electronic access or a lockbox access, it's so much easier. You don't have to give that to the tenant. You give that to whoever you're sending out there to service those issues. Maybe it's your HVAC guy or your electrician. So try to be smart and efficient about it. And then if you do need to run keys somewhere, you don't have to physically get in the car these days. You could run it through a messenger service, or I always talk about that 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.com. They run things around for us all the time. So set up your access so you don't have to run out there 2 a.m. and let a guy in to fix a no heat. That's my housing provider tip.
All right. Cool. Let's jump in. Let's talk. We have not specifically really hit on the CAA at all, have we? It's been mentioned, but we haven't had this in-depth conversation.
No, I'm surprised it's taken us this many episodes to get them on here. So I'm excited to have them on here because they're a big part of Chicago, just the Chicagoland housing community. So I'm really excited to dive in here.
Yeah, sorry. So today's guest, he is the Government Affairs Director at the Chicagoland Apartment Association. So when we say CAA, that's what the acronym stands for. He manages their grassroots efforts, educates housing providers on new and existing regulations, and speaks on behalf of the multifamily industry at the state, county, and state levels. He's been kept very busy as of late, securing common sense amendments to the city's RLTO, that's the Resident Landlord and Tenant Ordinance, and he's gearing up for another battle with rent control in Springfield, which we'll talk about as part of his CAA's 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗁 campaign. He's a Butler Bulldog and also a DePaul Blue Demon. So without further ado, Tom Benedetto, welcome to the show. Tom, first off, awesome last name. Love it. Rolls right off the tongue. It'd be impossible for me to mess that part up.
It sure does. It sure does. It's not hard for the general public at all. And I don't give that name at Starbucks, which is a good thing. Just Tom.
So, all right. Well, Tom, welcome to the show. I know we've had several conversations preparing for this, so we have a lot to cover. But to set the groundwork, can you give our listeners what is the CAA? I mean, we've just hammered with acronyms with NBOA and all the subsidiaries there and the Christopher Andersons of the world and their groups. But let's specifically focus on CAA.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom and Mark. It's a great show. I'm a listener of the show, so I'm very excited to actually be on here. It's a great opportunity to engage with you all and your audience. The CAA, and yeah, I'm not gonna be short on acronyms in this conversation. They're gonna still come, but the CAA, Chicagoland Apartment Association, we're an affiliate of NAA, the National Apartment Association, another acronym. We're the only affiliate in the state. We're a nonprofit trade association. We have about 250 property management companies within our membership, about 250,000 units that they oversee in the state of Illinois. About half of those are in Chicago, half are through the rest of the state, and all kinds of residential units, student, senior, affordable, you name it. And then as far as our members, about half or just over half of our members own and manage 500 units or less. And then we also have supplier members as well. So they provide the products and services to apartment managers and owners. So, last thing I'll say is, as a trade association, like any other trade association that's been on this show before, we do education, we put on events, and then we do advocacy, which is what I do.
Okay. So, we usually ask, what does it do for investors? And we'll get there in a second, but let's take a different spin on it. What would happen if the CAA didn't exist? Like, what are those high level points where, hey, if we weren't around, what would happen to investors in the city, county, and state here?
Without the association, we wouldn't have the property management perspective involved in these very important conversations that we're having at the legislative level. They're very important. And I think, we've been seeing that over the last few years, especially.
Got it. And so you mentioned, the strength of hearing voices from your members. About half the members are over 500 units. The other half are on the smaller side. Is there a certain point where it makes sense for an individual to become a member, right? Do you have people who own 3 units, or is it, well, you got to get up to a certain level or a certain quantity before membership might make sense? Like, talk through some of that, because most of our listeners are probably not members, nor know too much about what it actually entails.
Sure. It's a great question. Even if you have 1 unit, you can be a member of CAA. And if you have between 1 and 150 units, you pay the same dues to be a member. And from there, if you own over 150 units, it changes a little bit. I think CAA membership, no matter how many units you own, provides a major value to anyone out there who is in real estate or property management or as a housing provider, small or medium or large.
I asked this question to Chris Anderson and I'm trying to blank. You said his name before, from IAR. But what you guys do is to a lot of people is boring as heck. Like, what you do, it's specifically in this role. Like, what's your passion, and where's your passion come from to do this? Because I say that it sounded horrible, but I'm very grateful, and a lot of people, our listeners, are very grateful that you guys do what you do. But what is it, your personal passion that makes you do what you do every day?
Well, quite frankly, Mark, it is boring as heck, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are hitting that 15-second fast forward button over every answer. That's my favorite button when I listen to podcasts. But No, I think, certainly what makes me tick personally in advocacy, and I know, the other staff at CAA as well, is the people that are in property management and are in real estate and apartments are some of the nicest people I've ever met professionally. And that really helps quite a bit. So it's intrinsically, it is very, very easy to be motivated to work on these kinds of issues that can get very emotional. A lot of these legislative issues can be really tough to negotiate. You try to bring it down to the common sense things or practical components of these different measures that are introduced, but it's always, it's really hard to navigate and circumvent around all of these very emotional topics, because housing is very near and dear to people. It's really a core concept to just everyday life. So it is a really, really important sector to stay engaged in. And so in that sense, it's really easy for somebody who's kind of policy wonk like myself to stay engaged and really try to do the best that we can to make sure that there's some common sense policy out there.
Nice. I love it. Gideon was, I couldn't think of his name a second ago. And I always try to listen to everything double speed. So I always end up hitting the back 15 or 15 seconds, because when I miss up there, I want to hear something again. So walk us through how CAA advocates and makes a difference. What issues do you guys take the lead on?
Good question. So a lot of the issues that we tend to take the lead on are really property management focused issues. And a lot of them also happen to do with those algorithms, the acronyms again. So the RLTO, RTLO, ARO, JHO, you name it. We're usually taking the lead on those kinds of issues. And then in terms of how we advocate, I don't own real estate. I'm not an investor like many of your listeners are. So I rely on who is a member of CAA to really give us that expertise and to really walk us through at the association level just how harmful or how positive a policy that's been introduced is going to be for their day-to-day, activities on site. So we take a lot of that input from our membership and then across other memberships as well, NBOA, CAR, IAR, and we combine it and really try to make the best argument possible so that we're representing the industry as their voice. And so anytime you get those requests from your association to reach out about an issue, they really need it. So that is kind of where the whole process begins. And it ends with, negotiation and good conversation.
Got it. So you mentioned some of the other organizations, and we've had them on here, CAR, IAR, the NBOA. Walk me through how you guys work alongside each other and aren't stepping on each other, because it's a lot of similarities, right? Like why have these different organizations and how do you put on that unified front?
Sure. So I think we differ. There is a little crossover, but we differ in several key ways. And I would say again, CAA's expertise is really the property management side of things. And so when it comes to collaborating on issues, I think we're super, super good about that, which I'm grateful for. NBOA, CAR, IAR, other groups, so easy to work with. And because we understand that, our back is usually up against the wall in Chicago when real estate is being regulated. So our cooperation is key. And we usually come in guns a-blazing when we're all able to combine our forces and really, because everyone has a unique perspective in their association, we have a very, very robust and diverse perspective when it comes to sitting down at the negotiating table. So it's a great, great cooperation and partnership.
Got it. And going back to the members, so you said you take a lot of inputs from them, to really talk through, like, on the ground, this is what's happening. Once you're actually, let's call it at the table, right? You're actually having conversations with people who might have a difference of opinion. Is there still a role from the members, right? Like, at what point can they, besides just saying, hey, this is the data, this is what we see, what else can members do to help assist the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the major things that we do at CAA is we are very much engaged in grassroots advocacy. So we will put out a lot of calls to action, as you'll see. You might get those in your inbox from time to time. It might be a CAA link where we really need you to contact your legislator directly. And that is very key. And that really helps move the needle on a lot of these different issues. So while we're negotiating with legislators, and hope this isn't too much inside baseball, but I think your audience is an educated one. So, I'm sure they know the process. Once we're negotiating, I think it's good to have that there's some outside pressure, external pressure, people on the ground telling those legislators, hey, it's not just those association folks in the room that want this done. It's me and my two flat. And I rely on this for my income and for my livelihood. Really want you to listen to what I have to say. And that's really the strength of the association, is when we're able to do those calls to action and have that grassroots advocacy put into play.
The name is Chicagoland. You guys cover all the suburbs and housing providers that are in the 6 counties. Anyone can join up and participate and follow you guys, right?
Anyone can. Absolutely. We have about half of our members are in city of Chicago proper. 40% are in the collar counties. And then we have about 1 in 10 of our members are throughout the rest of the state of Illinois. So yes, come one, come all. It's a great association and organization.
Cool. So I'm curious, we've talked about rent control on here before, but we haven't talked about it on here since everything has transpired in Minnesota, or Minneapolis specifically. Minneapolis recently passed rent control. Maybe you could say exactly what they passed, but how does that work for or against everything that you guys have been, we as a group behind you guys trying to push back? How's that changed things here for what you're working on now?
Sure. So before the Twin Cities had their referendums, and I should note, be clear that those were 2 different referendums. It wasn't just, I like to think of the Twin Cities as kind of one, metropolis. It kind of looks like it when you drive through there. But these were 2 separate cities, 2 separate referendums. The St. Paul ordinance being, now one of the most stringent in the country. We've only seen rent control on the coast so far, but now we're seeing it in the Midwest. These are the first markets in the Midwest that will have rent control. St. Paul is effective immediately, and Minneapolis has to figure out what they are going to implement in their city. They have a little more leeway than St. Paul does.
Let's take one step backwards here. Let's talk about just rent control in general, because you hear it and no one wants to go in and the guy who like raises rent $400 on the old lady that they inherited, right? Like that's what rent control is made to avoid that situation and protect that tenant, which I think everyone agrees with. But talk about some of the negative consequences, or why are we advocating so hard against rent control? Because I don't think that's clear for everyone, especially newer people getting involved. Like, well, what's the big deal?
Absolutely. So rent control as a policy is shown in evidence to reduce the quantity and the quality of housing availability. And right now, the Chicago market alone needs to, just to keep up with demand, add about 50,000 units by 2030, just to keep up with demand and to keep those rents low. So the difficulty with a policy like rent control is it obviously sounds so great to anybody on the ground. To anybody, any voter, any citizen. But in the end, study after study shows that, longitudinally, it is going to be very detrimental to the housing market that it's implemented in. And we just cannot afford that here in Chicago. Illinois preempts rent control by state law. And we really have been working very hard via our Shape Illinois campaign over the last 3 or 4 years to promote more building of housing and less conversation about rent control and its detrimental effects.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was eye opening to me is Freakonomics just did that huge podcast. I think that sums it up so much better than I would ever articulate. But just pure data, not housing providers, not bias. Just this is data, and this is what happened to the places that implemented rent control. And it's a great, just like educated episode that I knew. I knew about 5% of what they were talking about when I listened to it. I was like, oh God, like this is why this is a big deal.
Right.
So we'll link to that in the show notes. But that episode, I can't remember the number of it, but it's from Freakonomics, and it was just completely eye opening. So, all right. So,
agreed.
Not to beat a dead horse with rent control. So, what is that like front and center for you right now? Like, are you waking up and spending X amount of hours a week on that? If not, what are some of the other things that CAA is really front and center on?
It's a big issue, and I don't want to have anybody think that, well, Minnesota, they passed it. I think Illinois is next, because we've really put in the groundwork over the last several years to show, whether it's just the average citizen or the policymaker in Springfield and Chicago, that this is not what our city and our state needs at this time. And we've been really effective in promoting and passing affordable housing legislation to increase the supply of affordable units instead of try to artificially cap the prices. So yeah, it's been a big issue on our radar for several years, but I don't know how long this podcast is, but we have about 20 things on the table right now, I'd say, that we're looking at. So we're constantly working on a plethora of issues. The desire to regulate real estate, as I said, is very strong and remains very strong.
Got it. And what are some of the things before you even get to the table, right? Before these negotiations are happening, do you guys have relationships with, senators, politicians, aldermen, et cetera? Like, are you guys just having those conversations, or are these individuals who have like 500 other things on their plate kind of just getting like a debrief, the morning before a vote? Like, I guess, how much information are they actually getting? Because we're looking at everything through a housing provider lens. They got so much more going on. Like, I do have a little bit of empathy for why they don't understand some of the things that we think are so obvious.
You're right, Tom. We are proactive whenever we can be. So especially in the sense of like rent control, for example, we go out of our way to explain this very, very complex issue to legislators before it gets to that moment, as you described, that, they're being briefed before a vote, and everything happens very quickly. So, and that's every association, every organization, every issue. That's just best practice. But I do really feel for a lot of legislators, whether it's at the city, the county, the state. I mean, everywhere. There is just so much that they have to keep track of that, the more we can do our part to just relay a common sense message about this policy, and show that academic studies and so many economists say that it's a bad policy. I think that really does the work for us, and we're glad that the research is there to show that what our housing providers are telling us it would be detrimental is actually detrimental.
What do you lose sleep? What do you or the organization lose sleep about at night? What's around the corner that the rest of us everyday landlords or property managers are not seeing? Or what's the I don't know. That's what I'm always thinking. Like, what am I not seeing? Like, kind of share with us kind of what you guys might be working on or might be talking about that the rest of us is not even close.
Sure. I think what makes this work in this field so difficult, and I'm a deep sleeper, so I don't lose sleep. I don't know what it is. I sleep long, so I'm fine. But I guess what stresses me out during the day is just kind of the inability to talk to people who might be on the other side of our issues. It's very hard to have a conversation with folks who believe so far in the direction of housing should be a social asset. It should be a social good, a public good. It will, or maybe I should rephrase that, because social good is not a good way to say it. So I'll just repeat. It's so hard to have a conversation with somebody who believes that housing is and should be a public good, because that's not the way that our system is set up. So to have that kind of conversation that needs to take place about, let's say, affordable housing and how we need to get it in everywhere in the city that we can, it's very hard when somebody ideologically really just doesn't want to have that conversation on that plane. They just want to have it be public and have the government oversee housing, which we know has been a disaster in the past, and is really not a realistic path forward. So that I think is what's tough. I'm sure that's hard for you both too, in your lives and in your professional careers too. It's just hard to navigate that conversation with some folks.
Yeah. So the divide between left and right, and kind of how it's getting further apart is going to make things get more difficult in our field, getting things done, I think. So I think I agree.
Yeah.
Tom, what else besides advocacy, right? Like, so, all right, we can help our own cause here, but I know you guys also have just a ton of information, right? There's events, there's an education section on the site. Besides the advocacy, our listeners are probably thirsty for a lot of this information. So talk a little about what's out there that we can just use to educate ourselves. Sure.
So, I think this is probably the part of the podcast where the guest spells out their website name. So our website is caapts.org, caps.org. There's a ton of resources on there, even if you're not a member. The tab that I spend the most time working on is the advocacy tab. So that's all the advocacy stuff. And then, if you are a member of CAA, you've got access to all of the classes that we put on, pretty much weekly. We have classes. We've got weekly newsletters. So I put out a legislative newsletter every other week. And then on the off weeks that's not going out, we put an e-newsletter out that's got all kinds of information for professionals out there. So you're hearing from CAA once a week. So I don't want to turn this into an infomercial, but in my mind, there really isn't any better way to be plugged in as an investor than to receive our weekly communication. So those are great resources. And then, having access to our associate and supplier members with our networking events is huge, I know, for a lot of folks in the industry. And then one thing I think that is really fun to promote is we have a annual awards show as well called the Cami Awards, and it's promoting excellence in property management. We have a ton of different categories that people are nominated for, and it's a really fun event every year in a ballroom. And I think it's another great way to get involved and to meet others and to be recognized as well.
I had a property manager work for me one time. He won a Cami through you guys, through his previous company. And I don't think he went a week without telling me how he won that Cami. Like he was so proud of that award, which was cool. He did pretty good work. But that's funny. You just made me think of that.
That's
nice.
Awesome.
All right. So Tom, let's say it's 5 years from now. Marcus down doing his 2027 goals. What would make you just absolutely thrilled at the progress of CAA? Like what, because it's almost like you're always on the defensive, right? We're battling. But what is that like vision, North Star of like, yes, like we have set out to do what we accomplished?
Great question. I think 5 years from now, it'd be great to not be on the defensive so much, and for us to have been proactive enough to the point where everyone understands our issues and we can actually start to kind of go into some of the harmful policies that are out there for our industry and really start to scale them back. One is the RLTO in the city. We know that there is a lot of loopholes within that ordinance that leaves a lot of property managers open to class actions that are just really terrible. Nothing they're, if they're wrongdoing, I think it's, just any common sense person would want to see fixed and would think it was not right. So 5 years from now, that would be a great thing for that to pass the city council. We're trying our best right now to do so.
Love it. Good answer.
I'll say Illinois population increase.
Incline. That's a good one. Yeah. How about you, Tom? What's your 5 year plan?
Oh man, I gotta sit down and do my goals, guys. I don't know. So the 𝗦𝘁𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗁 answer of celebrating the 5-year anniversary of you asking me that question.
But that's why I love that last episode we did with the refugees and seeing how many come through Chicago. Like, hey, if we can't get other people to say, people that aren't from the country, they'll love it here and stick here, so that can help our population.
That'd be great. And maybe a few world championships on the south side would be great. And, keep the development in that area up, around Old 𝗬𝗏𝗃. That'd be great. I don't know for you guys if that'd be a great goal, but
I got my White Sox hat on today, even actually.
There it is. It was backwards.
And Tom did, because I was afraid Tom would make a comment about it's not being a Cubs hat. So
come on, Tom.
I got my Bulls. I got my Bulls on.
I'm a Chicago fan, but no one ever likes that answer. I like them both. So
that's a terrible answer.
It's tough. We could all agree on the Bulls. The Bears we're not going to talk about.
All right. Well, cool. Mark, wrap this up.
All right. You ready for our fire round here? What has been your competitive advantage as an advocator for Chicago landlords?
Sure. Well, I think I started late. I started off actually as a kindergarten teacher. And so I feel like I'm trying to kind of recoup a lot of that lost time. And so I'm very motivated in that regard. And then when I'm not motivated, I drink as much caffeine as possible.
There you go.
That's an awesome answer.
I was worried you weren't going to say caffeine.
Yeah, I didn't know when you said caffeine. I'm like, oh man, we're gonna have to edit this one.
Although right now, I gotta say, I'm drinking some almond nog. If you haven't had it, you might want to try it. If you're eggnog fans, give it a shot. It's pretty good.
All right, so there's some advice, but what is one piece of advice that you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property in the Chicagoland area?
Oh, that's a good one. I would certainly be educated as you can on the neighborhood history and definitely become a part of that neighborhood and see what kind of organizations are out there and what the neighbors are saying. Get a beat on who lives there and, the history of the neighborhood. Don't just, buy units there because it's in the city. I don't know. I think it's great to have a sense of where you're invested in.
I like it. All right. Besides nog, what do you do for fun?
I have been playing a lot of basketball lately. And my end of year goal is to dunk. And yes, that's a tough, that's going to be a tough one, but that's my end of year goal is to actually dunk it. So we'll see how it goes.
Where are you at now? Like a mini basketball, volleyball? Like, are we getting close?
Yep. I've got, your audience can't see it, but I do have a basketball hoop right in my living room. And, once in a while I throw it up there. It's about 7 feet. So I can get it up there, but, I'm close. I'm like, 9.5, I could get there, but man, just elusive enough. Got to do it.
When I was working out for the Grand Canyon, my goal is to at least touch net again, get flexible enough to be able to touch net. So in 5, 6.5, the net is an accomplishment without getting hurt at 40.
Feels good when you touch it. Just feels so smooth, so silky. You're like, God, I'm up here. Yep. I'm up here in the heavens.
Then you roll your ankle crashing down.
Yeah, exactly. Too many times. Oh man.
What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you would recommend to our listeners?
I really like the podcast Hidden Brain. I think that is a really good one from NPR. And a good book, I'm going to steal 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗵𝗁 Young's, and it's The Splendid and the Vile. I think that needs to be that needs to be promoted again. I heard her say that and I jumped for joy because it's one of my favorite books. And so, if you were going to look into that book, during Stacey Young's episode, here's your reminder to go buy it because Erik Larson is amazing.
Mark, did you get around to that one yet?
I didn't. It's fiction, right?
Nonfiction, completely
it's
true.
Oh, it was about London or something like that. I think it was, and that's what discouraged me. Like I don't know if I could go outside Chicago. Like, but Hidden Brain is a great podcast, but I can't listen to it till like after. I can't listen to it after 7 o'clock at night because it puts me to sleep. Just that guy's voice is like,
oh, it's so good for so true, true.
So. Both good podcasts, and then I'm going to get the book now. I have to double recommendation. All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you'd highly recommend to other Chicago investors as a quality resource.
Oh, I'd have to push that over to my counterparts at the realtors, Adrian 𝗬𝗫𝗵𝗁 and Chris Anderson. Love working with them. They do such good work at the realtors, and proud to be associated with them. They're great folks. Keep engaged with them if you weren't already.
All right.
Good answer. I know we've had Chris on here. We need to get Adrian on here.
We did.
This was episode 56.
Adrian, we interviewed when we were I did that for the MBOA. I interviewed her for the kind of what we're trying to go up against that vote. So we did have her kind of on here.
Yeah, get her on. Get her on. That's awesome. She's wonderful.
Awesome. So Tom, you provided a ton of value to our listeners. You've dropped the website if you want to drop it here again, but how can they learn more about you? And is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, plug in CAAPTS.org. And anytime you see a call to action email, please respond. That's the value you could provide. I'd appreciate it. We'd all appreciate it. And feel free to reach out. Also, 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗁 is a great way to get involved. And just feel free to email me. We can see how we can plug you in. I know it can be frustrating to see all of these different regulations in the news and to fear that you might be the next one to have to sell your property. But yeah, plug in and see what you can do to fight back against that. And CAA would love to get to know you.
All right, awesome. Mark, I think we can get this one. I think this is a doable fact. Not to put any pressure on your shoulders.
I hate when you do that.
All right. So that should be your New Year's resolution to try to get X% of these right next year. So you probably know population size, where Chicago ranks amongst the U.S. cities. Like you probably know that answer. But where does it rank in terms of population per city? So not surrounding area, just the actual city limits amongst North American cities.
So is the question the city
population? Where do we rank amongst North American cities?
So city proper, you're saying?
Yep.
Is that multiple choice?
No, come on.
Well, I know third, fourth. Probably fourth.
Okay,
fourth.
Tom, what do you want to go with?
I think fourth.
Close. No cigar. Fifth.
Who's in front of us now?
So we got we're still third in the U.S., but you got Mexico City, New York City, L.A., Toronto, Chicago. At least that's what Wikipedia told me. Someone can fact check me.
I don't ever fact check Wikipedia. It's always correct, so I wouldn't do that.
Well, the fun fact I heard was that I've heard before is Toronto. Everyone thinks it's like up north, like it's even
south of Minneapolis.
Yes, it's even with Milwaukee, on a map from going right to left. You think like it's way up there or something like that, but it's not. All right, awesome, Tom and Tom. What a great show! Thank you guys very much as always. Listeners, please, as you hang up here, please leave us a 5-star review. But more importantly, we'll take the review, but refer us to a friend. You have investor friends. I've said that before. Please share it with your real estate investment groups, other places you might be going to get your information or your deals. Please share that. And we will see you next Thursday. Tom and Tom, thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Take care.